I recently was able to attend a breaching class at one of the premier law enforcement training facilities in the country. I was able to get hands-on with both the tools and techniques used by actual SWAT teams. This video will be a general overview of mechanical and thermal breaching. Now, I do want to provide some context for this right off the bat. There are many different ways to get through obstacles. This is not firefighter breaching. We are going to be talking about this under the tactical umbrella, where like firearms and potential threats are involved. This is also not military breaching. We're not going to be driving a tank through any walls or greeting each new doorway with a frag grenade. This context of breaching is mostly targeted at law enforcement in the United States, with some crossover to like a prepared citizen. Think SWAT team executing a search warrant. It's important to note that this is very much environmentally dependent. A sliding glass door in the Midwest is a much different breach than a waterfront property in Florida. Hurricane-rated glass is a non-trivial obstacle. That same sort of thinking applies for the different types of buildings you may encounter as well. A residential trailer park is a much different breach than a commercial warehouse. Recognizing the problem is the first step towards a solution, and you need to be able to do that. So let's talk about doors and how to breach them. There are many types of doors. Let's start with the weakest doors. These are typically in the interior of a residential structure, like the door to a bedroom or a closet. These are framed in wood and very flimsy. In some cases, they are quite literally made of cardboard. Due to how flimsy they are, everybody just wants to kick them in. Now, the problem with that is they are so weak that oftentimes your foot will just go straight through the door. This also means that rams often are not the best tool for interior doors. You get all excited, you go to ram a door, and then you just send your ram through the door into the room you're trying to breach. So what are your options for getting in? Most of the time, the locks on these are pretty bad. Sometimes it doesn't even have a key at all, and it's just a little poke hole that you can stick something in to unlock. The downside with trying to lockpick these is that even though they're simple locks, it can take some time to do. And by the time you've reached a locked interior door, it is very likely that the jig is up and everybody in the house knows what you're doing there. The benefits of using lockpicks are that it's pretty much silent, and if you have all the time in the world and you want to be super sneaky, you can go that route, but oftentimes there's better options in this context. You can pop these doors open with a bit of force, but it is important to apply that force in the right spot. Your objective is not to overcome the structural integrity of the door. You're trying to put as much energy as you can directly into the locking mechanism. So when you strike the door with something like a sledgehammer, it matters where you hit the door. You want to get as close to the lock as possible. There is no real structure for an interior door. There's a little block of wood around the knob, and all of the rest of the structure is around the frame. There's nothing really there. Another option is to just saw the door in half. If you take a chainsaw to an interior door, you can cut it top to bottom in very little time, and it totally bypasses whatever locks may have been added on by the owner. The obvious downside of that is that it's very loud, and while fast, it does take a bit of time to actually cut a door. My preferred breach method for an interior door is a shotgun. Breaching shotguns are super handy. They look something like this. Now, mine has wood on it because I only breach classy establishments, but you can often recognize them by a little standoff device at the front. Royal Arms makes good breaching rounds and muzzle devices. The purpose of those breaching rounds are to provide the minimum energy needed to breach the door and open it. You can absolutely breach a door with birdshot, but whatever's on the other side of the door is going to get a face full of lead. The benefit of breaching specific rounds are that when the proper technique is used, you can put a literal child on the other side of the door you're trying to breach and breach it with a shotgun, and the child would remain totally unharmed. Now, shotguns are not for primary breach points. Rams, pries, hammers, torches, saws, all that sort of stuff is used as the main way to get in. The shotgun is for secondary breaches inside a structure. Also, shotgun breaching only works when you can see the locking mechanism. If you can't see it, some people say to just shoot the hinges. That doesn't work. You're gonna have a bad time. Don't do that. So, for the technique, line the top of the barrel with the top of the knob, move the shotgun up 45 degrees, and if it is a wood frame, angle it 45 degrees so that you're shooting into the frame. If there is one lock on the door, it should only take one round to open. Now that sounds pretty simple, and in theory it is, but when you actually go to do this for the first time, there's a lot of other stuff going on that you're thinking about, and if you don't put the muzzle in the right spot, or remember to do 45 up, or remember to do 45 over, you can get failed breaches. This is something that you just need to practice to get consistent with. As a quick aside, the flashbang shotgun rounds are fantastic for sliding glass doors. If you shoot down into the bottom of the frame, the entire glass shatters and it just sprinkles down out of the way and your team can enter. Now let's talk about residential metal doors. These are often the like typical exterior door on a house, or like sometimes a light commercial door. These doors are often foam filled with just sheet metal or a veneer glued over the core, usually wooden framed, may contain light steel reinforcements. These front doors can withstand more force than an interior door. That means that the force from something like a ram can actually be imparted through the door into the locking mechanism instead of just going through the door and making a ram-sized hole. Let's talk about rams. Not all rams are created equal. If you have a ram where handles are perpendicular to the striking axes, you do increase the risk of injury to your wrists considerably. What works the best are handles in line with the striking axis. This will often give you more flexibility on hand placement as well. Also, don't go out and buy the heaviest ram you can. Oftentimes there are weird porches or space constraints, and if you try to lift a 40-pound ram above your head, lean over, and try and set the tool to get in, you're gonna have a bad time. Also, you shouldn't just give the biggest guy on your team the ram and have him do all the work. Everybody should know how to ram a door. Just in general, mission critical ability shouldn't be tied to one person. If somebody's injured or sick or busy playing the new Battlefield game, you should feel comfortable filling that role. So the first step to ramming a door is to identify the problem. It may sound silly, but identify if the door is a push door or a pull door, and if it is a pull door, do not try and ram it. It's not going to work. You're just going to have a bad time and everyone's going to laugh at you. The quickest way to tell if it's a pull door is if you can see the hinges. Proper technique also matters. Just using your arms and swinging is not a good way to impart energy. Pull back, get your whole body into it, and strike the door. If it is a pull door, this is where you want a hammer and pry tool. Now you may have seen firefighters carry what's called a Halligan tool. The downside to them is that they are pretty big. As a quick story, a couple of years ago, there was a spontaneous hostage situation. Some guys got a knife to their domestic partner's throat. Police show up, they breach the exterior door. He retreats back down a narrow hallway into a room, solid wood door, and locks it. One of the responding officers had the foresight to bring their Halligan tool with them, but it was too long and couldn't get into the frame on either side because the wall was in the way. This substantially delayed the police response getting in and helping that situation. That is one of the benefits of a pry tool like this. It collapses so that you can actually carry it easily on your kit so that it's actually there when you need it, but you can also adjust it to whatever length your environment allows you to use. So with your pry tool, you need to have it thin enough, sharp enough, and have the right curve to it so that when you get it in the door frame, you can actually get it behind the door and pull. If you go to defense mechanisms and use code AFT, you can get either the pry or the hammer. Defense mechanism also makes the little holders that actually lets you carry this on your kit, and they have a bunch of other cool stuff on their website. Go use code AFT and it'll give you 10% off whatever you want. They were kind enough to send me out some tools, so please go support them as they're pretty cool guys and they support the channel. Now, Class 3 doors are heavy metal doors typically found in commercial settings. Schools, older apartments, commercial buildings, and like higher security areas. These are solid wood or metal doors with a welded frame. They often have multiple locking mechanisms or internal reinforcement, and these are frequently attached to reinforced frames or even set in masonry. These can be a very difficult breach. A cutoff saw or thermal torch is going to be your friend here. The benefit of a thermal torch is that they can get through pretty much any metal and they are pretty quiet. The downside is the bulk of carrying it around and the obvious fire hazard. It burns like hotter than the sun. Thermal torches are also very bright, so keep that in mind if you're doing a nighttime operation. Some of the more tactical branded thermal torches can also be kind of hard to put out once you start it, and one of your guys kind of has to babysit the torch until it's ready to be packed up and moved to the next task. The quickie saws are great. The downside to them is that they are loud and can be bulky. I would recommend with whatever power tools you get for breaching is to get the electric version of them. Gas fumes from a chainsaw or quickie saw in a hallway can build up and it's just not a fun time. Sometimes when you come across a heavily reinforced door, it can simply be easier to breach the wall next to it than the actual door itself. If a suspect heavily barricades a door right next to drywall, I'm going through the drywall. One way to quickly go go through a wall like that is with a chainsaw. If you run into rock wool insulation, it can kind of be annoying on a chainsaw, but typically an interior wall doesn't have that. There is a recommended procedure for chainsawing a hole in drywall. You want to make the hole large enough so that everyone and their kit can fit through it. That means starting high with a horizontal plunge cut, going until you hit a stud, then going back through the first stud and landing on the second, pull it out, zip down, and then do a horizontal cut and push the drywall in. When you do this, you want to be mindful of where the electrical outlets and light switches are. Typically, the power runs through the wall run horizontally to the power outlets. So if your lower horizontal cut stays above the power outlet, you should be fine. Now, what we just talked about is not an all-inclusive list of doors. There are many types of doors and locks you may come across. Many doors have push bars or multiple lock locations. Some doors have glass or windows. Very often, people will think that the glass in the door can be broken easily, but that actually takes a surprising amount of force to break through, especially if you're in a commercial setting. If you take a ram to the glass, it will often even stay together, and you can just kind of push the glass down out of the frame. Fire ratings are also something that can be an indicator of the integrity of a door. Often found on the spine, something with a 20-minute fire rating will be a very different breach than a 3-hour fire rated door. You may come across commercial double doors, often like the front doors of a mall. These are very easy to defeat. I think my favorite tool I've used for breaching is an electric angle grinder with a cutoff blade in it. The lock that holds those types of doors together can easily be cut with an angle grinder, and you're in super quick. It also has the benefit of not looking like you just breached a door, and a lock is a much cheaper fix than paying to replace a whole door when your department's done breaching something. Bronco makes a breaching cutoff wheel accessory for a DeWalt grinder that is extremely useful. If I could have one power tool on my kit for breaching, it would probably be that. Trailer park doors are often worse than interior doors in a residential structure because not only is the door itself flimsy, but the entire wall around it is flimsy as well. This can be very dangerous if you go to breach it for similar reasons as an interior door. Some people make specialized tools specifically made for breaching mobile homes. You can kind of peel them back and open them like a can of sardines. Now, going out and buying a tool and knowing how to use it are two very different things. There are a wide variety of tools for breaching as required by the wide variety of things that need to be breached. For hand tools, a little pry bar is just super handy. You can get them in all sorts of shapes and sizes. If you cheap out on a pry tool, you do run the risk of breaking it when you go to use it. And if it does break, it's often very violent, and lots of shrapnel and possibly injury. This is something that I would probably recommend going a step above Harbor Freight for. Even a nice pry tool is not that expensive, maybe 70 bucks, and it's not going to explode on you. Another very handy tool is a wedge. There is the obvious keeping a door open aspect to wedges. Maybe after you defeat a lock on a door and don't want it to relatch as your team is coming in. They can also be used to keep doors closed. If you enter a space with lots of angles of exposure, a wedge can keep one of the doors closed, or at least harder for a bad guy to surprise you with it, and that gives your team less things to think about at once. You can also use them to pop doors off of their hinges. Some wedges have little magnets in them that you can place on the hinge, and then you just pull the door closed on it and it pops right off its hinges. Good bolt cutters have replaceable and adjustable jaws. They come in varying sizes. For hand cutters, you want the ones that are spring loaded and automatically expand back into your hand. Cutting a chain link fence will totally kill your hand if you don't have that feature. One benefit for using appropriately sized bolt cutters on something like a padlock is that they are both fast and silent. For windows, you can get a rake tool. It kind of looks like a Grim Reaper staff. They're specifically designed for window entry. You can break the window and then kind of clear the glass out of the way with them. You can also get creative and DIY your own breaching tools, or you can also modify existing tools and make them more suited for breaching. Oftentimes, in my experience, that's been figuring out a way to carry them on your kit because normal tools aren't really meant for sling attachment points. Sometimes the fastest breach is just not breaching at all. Chain link fence can be kind of slow to get through, so if you knew you had to get over a fence fast, you could just ladder over it. Or if you drive a truck up to it, you can have your people on the truck and then either ladder down the other side or fast rope down the other side. There are a lot of little tricks you can learn with breaching. One thing you can do if you're faced with like a heavy commercial door is take a quickie saw and do a plunge cut, and then take a little framing square, kind of slide it through the cut, and you can activate the push bar on the inside and just pull the door open. That's a lot faster than defeating the entire door. Roof access can be difficult, but it might be the only way to get in, or the easiest way to get in, or a way to come at an additional angle to a target. If you can cut a hole in the top of one, you can almost always reach in and open it. Sometimes they have padlocks on them to keep kids from getting up on the roof inside, and you'll have to cut that, but they're relatively easy to open. Now, if you're doing explosive breaching, you need really squared away guys doing your explosive breaching. Explosive breachers feel the pressure of not wanting to let their team down and go for P for plenty. It is possible with explosive breaching, if you have the right equipment and the right training, to very gently open any door, to the point where if there was somebody on the other side of that door, like right up against the door, you would rather explosive breach it than ram it, because the force from the ram is a lot more likely to cause injury than a properly sized charge for that door. Due to the laws around explosives, that is pretty much relegated to police departments, not civilians. But that said, IWA does make black powder breaching charges. One of the main benefits of them is that they are not destructive devices and any civilian can buy it. They are pretty much the only option for civilian legal explosive breaching, and it is pretty cool to have that sort of capability as just a normal individual. Now, I am not an expert on explosive breaching, but IWA did send me some of their door breaching charges, and I was able to try them out on some doors. They are not as powerful or precise as actual shape charges. They also produce a lot more shrapnel, but simply having that capability as an option is super cool, and they did work pretty much how you would expect them to. Explosive breaching is super fun. Thank you to IWA for sending those out, and it totally wrecked those doors. Now, there is a lot more to know about breaching, but I kind of wanted this video just to serve as an introduction. If you are interested in breaching, leave a comment, and I may do more breaching content in the future. Remember to check out Defense Mechanisms, code AFT if you want to buy a hammer, and jackets and hats are available at theaftstore.com. Thanks for watching.